Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is your Commissioner Bob Trollsby chiming in to give you a quick primer on what to expect. This is the beginning of part one of a three-part series that we are going to be doing, previewing the offensive position groups and the offense as a whole for K-State. And then after that series, we'll be doing the exact same thing on the defensive side of the ball, covering each position group. From defensive line to cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers. But just as a quick primer, this was originally an hour and 40-minute long episode. We have cut this down into three specific parts. The first part is going to cover off on overarching offensive themes, as well as the quarterback position group, the battle behind Avery Johnson, and just some of Avery Johnson's expectations for this year, and if we think those can be met or not. The second episode will feature some of the more skill position players, including running back, wide receiver, and the various depth charts that are associated with each of those rooms. And then finally, we're going to cover off on tight ends in the offensive line, especially some of the questions around how much we're going to see Lincoln Cure this year in the tight end room, as well as on the offensive line, some of the questions that have surrounded the change with George Fitzpatrick, obviously going under some medical circumstances that are certainly not ideal, and how that changes the depth chart and how that changes some of the rotational pieces around the offensive line. So we're going to start it off with the offense as a whole. We're going to talk about quarterback. Part two, again, running backs and wide receivers. And then part three will be tight ends in the offensive line. But just want to give you a quick primer before we get into it, because that isn't incredibly clear when I get into the episode here in a minute. But appreciate you listening, watching, wherever you are. And let's get into the episode.
Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine.
Dirty.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I'm your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball, Matt Marchesini. Before we dive into the episode, we want to give a quick shout-out to our sponsor, Auntie May's Parlor, located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Auntie May's tomorrow night, Wednesday, August 6th, they've got Trivia Smackdown, open mic comedy with host Mary Renee on Thursday, August 7th. And I don't know if I love the name of this next band, but it's Nebraska Junior Blues Band playing a free show at the Parlor. It's going to be Friday, August 8th. But as you can tell, they've got live music, comedy, all sorts of events every single week. Bingo, Trivia Smackdown, you name it, they've got it. Pride in the Parlor, all sorts of stuff going on there. Check out what they've got going. If you go to auntiemays.com, you can see a list of all their upcoming events. You can see the menu. You can see all that good stuff. And you know what? They've got craft cocktails, draft beers, and everything in between. They've been doing it, serving it up for 51 years running, and they also have Coors there as well, just in case you were curious. But another heads up, we will have these for sale, these koozies, Wildcat Country, Let's Ride.
That's so hot.
These are going to be for sale in the Parlor here in the next few weeks. So be sure to check out the Parlor and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Again, Auntie May's is located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville. All right, guys, tonight we are doing our long-awaited position group breakdown episode every year. This is one of our most watched, most listened to, most downloaded episodes. So the people are always curious to hear what Chef, what Matt, probably not so much me, what we have to say about the team, each position group. And we're going to break it down. We're going to get into it. But Chef, you're from a different location. You care to tell the Cokeheads a little bit more about your little staycation action?
I'm estranged in Cincinnati, Ohio.
I mean, it's like a third world country out here, for God's sake. You
Your
know how much I
favorite city.
despise Cincinnati. I despise it. I hate it.
Oh, no. What's it like living out of a hotel? Oh, my gosh.
What is it?
What's it like living out of a hotel?
It's living out of a suitcase. You might as well be out of your car, to be honest.
Might as well.
Might as well. Well, you know what? He's going to have some distractions tonight, but we'll get through it. But again, we are always excited about the position group breakdown. I think to start it off, I wanted to zoom out. We're going to start with offense, and then the next episode will be defense. You'll hear us just talk about offense on this episode and then wait for next week. We'll be dropping the defensive portion of this, but we'll also talk about special teams on that one. But coming into the 2025 season and just taking a broader look at the offense, which position group do the two of you have the most confidence in coming into this season?
Oh, gosh. I mean, the most confidence has got to come from where your best players are. So it's got to be quarterback room, right? I mean, another experienced quarterback behind, well, not experienced, but Avery, an experienced year coming off his first full year starting. Jacob Knuth, who we all had high praise, and he's a Wildcat through and through. And then everything we're hearing about Blake Barnett, if he's the next up-and-coming guy, if he can get, some garbage time reps, I feel strong about quarterback number 2, especially how they're going into battle this camp season to see who actually takes the throne. But Avery Johnson could be the best quarterback in the Big 12. So I have to feel the most confident in that room.
That's a good selection. I'm going to go with maybe one that I don't know. We'll just see how the conversation goes, but I'm actually going to go with the tight end room. I think if you look at how that group performed last season, in a way, I almost feel like it was unexpected in a way of just how many guys that we had that were able to be really successful in that position last year. If you think about, obviously, Garrett Oakley, Braden Lofton, Will Ancio, Will Swanson. You have guys who were catching touchdown passes. We're doing a good job from a blocking perspective in different situations. But overall, I mean, I think about that group last year. You don't lose anybody going into this year, and you add 5-star freshman and Lincoln Cure to that room. It's hard for me to not take that group, just because if you think that group could get even better, then it gives Avery Johnson more of the ability to have guys who, he feels comfortable throwing the ball to, especially in red zone situations. So that's a group of guys that I'm excited about. And I'm excited to see how, 2 tight end situations get leveraged here during the 2025 season.
Yeah, that's a good point, because how often are we going to, because we heard such high praise. I mean, this is the 3rd year running maybe that we've heard that the wide receivers have taken a jump and that we're expecting more and more things from the wide receiver unit. But the tight end group is so proven, like Matt said. How can you keep 2 tight ends off the field? And that obviously limits how many wide receivers you have out of there. I think, like you said, Matt, I think them being in the red zone is where they're really going to make their hay. So if they're scoring touchdowns, maybe not, racking up 50 or 60 yards per game, but, they're catching 2 touchdowns and off of four completions for 20 yards. I mean, that is a successful tight end room. So it's going to be interesting to see how, fundamentally the formations will be using, especially when it comes to red zone. Do we spread them out? Matt Wells throws a whole new wrinkle into this to really tell you what position groups are, prioritized.
If you're watching this, you may have seen my reaction when Matt said tight ends, because that's what I was going to say as well. I think coming into last season, and the two of you kind of giggled at this when I said it, but I remember stating I think the tight end room might have the most depth from top to bottom of any position group, not just on offense, but on defense. I said that last year, and how did it play out?
I really poo-pooed it.
You did. And I have the most degree of confidence in that group from top to bottom. It's not even a question for me. And to Matt's point, you bring in 5-star, the first 5-star in K-State history, at least recorded history, since they've been tracking this stuff, and in Lincoln Cure. And to think that he could be someone that they go to on a regular basis, or, a couple times a game, it's scary to think about if you're a defensive coordinator in the Big 12 to have to scheme for some of these tight ends. And I've got a question that's going to be coming up later when we talk wide receivers. But I think when you look at the wide receiver room, there's kind of those three guys. And I would be like, okay, the two of you, we'll get to this later, but project out the 5 deep, because once you get past those three guys, it's kind of a big question mark. But when you combine the tight ends, it becomes less of a question mark, because those are the guys who are going to be the pass catchers that you go to in addition to a Dylan Edwards or Joe Jackson out of the backfield, as opposed to potentially like a Jaquise Bradley Demps or Sterling Lockett. So it's, you may have a 5 deep at wide receiver, but I don't know how much you're going to go to some of those, bottom 2 guys past, Jace Brown, JB Bradley, and Jerron Tibbs. But, we're great minds think alike, Matt. I'm right there with you on tight end, but I agree with you as well, Chef. I think quarterback for K-State to go to and win a Big 12 championship and to make it to the college football playoff, we need to see elite level play from Avery Johnson. No doubt about it. I think I know both of your answers on this, but it could be one of 2 position groups. I'm curious when you think about question marks now. And maybe there weren't as many question marks a few weeks ago before the health scare on O-line with Fitzpatrick. But which position group do you feel like you have the most question marks on as we sit here on August 5th with, 18 days until we kick off in Ireland?
It's interesting because my first gut reaction, obviously, before Fitzpatrick went down, I didn't have any concern of the O-line. I think we had our stalwart at left tackle, but now that he goes down, it kind of puts into question. But really, in terms of depth, I think it's got to be running backs. I mean, Dylan Edwards this is kind of his prove it year, similar to what Avery had to do, where he was the main guy. And now Dylan is going to be the main guy, assuming that he can carry the load, then that throws everything that I'm saying out the window. But then you're relying on a Joe Jackson to carry more carries than he ever has. And he's already been, a health scare in terms of like where his shoulders are at, his legs are at throughout seasons. And he's not even been, a regular contributor. And then after him, you're talking about freshmen, real newcomers, and, transfers that I was high on that really haven't even, been mentioned in fall camp. And if they have been mentioned, it's because they probably haven't been around. So that's not a good thing. The room is small. I'll mention that as well. I mean, they're not the biggest group of running backs. And maybe, like I said, we'll know more with what Matt Wells can do with this group. And maybe this revolutionizes how we use the running backs at K-State. Obviously, we've dealt with small running backs before, but I mean, in terms of getting them out wide, doing different kinds of runs and spreading them out and doing that. But the depth, that concerns me, because it's going to be relying on people that we haven't, and we don't have. I mean, you could be honest, Dylan Edwards is probably one of the most talented running backs in the Big 12, but he's not the cream of the crop yet. So we don't have the best player in the league, and we don't have the most depth. So that's why I'm concerned about running back.
I think for me, it would be very difficult to now put the offensive line as the one position group here with a lot of question marks, especially with what happened with George Fitzpatrick here in the past couple weeks, and especially an offensive line that is going to look a lot different, I would say, than last season. And we know, and this has always been my shtick, but from an offensive line perspective, returning a good portion of that group typically bodes success for your team. And, especially early on, playing a huge game in week 0. You have the Army game in week 2. Early on, your offensive line is really going to have to get it together. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this group does look, who's going to be kind of that starting 5 out there, and where specific players are going to play on the line. Because especially in week 0 against an Iowa State front 7, that's going to be really good. I mean, historically they have a really good front 7 group. It's going to be important to have our offensive line together, especially to try and get Dylan and potentially Avery, some quarterback runs and or runs in general, and for pass protection, making sure Avery has the ability to get the ball out to our new group of wide receivers, the tight ends, etc. So the offensive line is probably my biggest question mark, and maybe the biggest question mark I would say I have on the team right now. Just knowing the understated importance of having a group that is cohesive and together. It's going to be very important, especially in these practices, that they are, growing close together, understanding, assignments, etc., so that they can be successful in week 0.
Not only that, but you are turning over offensive line coaching duties from Connor Riley to Brian LePack this season. And I'm sure there will be some kind of growing pains along with that. There may not be. There's definitely some question marks when you think about that, just thinking bigger picture there. But my answer is more so wide receivers is where I have a lot of question marks, because this is now what year in a row is this now that we've brought in transfer guys, or we've had dudes talked about behind the scenes or publicly in press conferences that they're the next man up. They're going to be, they could be a 1,000-yard receiver. We still have not had a 1,000-yard receiver since Curry Sexton and Tyler Lockett. So I have question marks about that position. I'll happily be proven wrong. I don't think they're going to be a bad position group, and I don't worry about pass catchers with this team generally because of the prolific nature of the tight end group, and also a guy like Dylan Edwards who will be catching passes from Avery Johnson. But it's more so, we've been sold damaged goods in the wide receiver room for a while now. We do have a proven commodity with Jace Brown. We have a guy in JB Bradley who was a proven commodity but fell off a little bit. So he's got to have that comeback season similar to what we hoped would happen with Dante Cephas last year. And that didn't end up happening, like we all are aware of now. And then with Jerron Tibbs, yeah, I've seen the catches. We've seen the social media posts. You have to put it together in a game. And I want to see that on a consistent game in, game out basis. So for me, it's more so wide receivers being that question mark. I do, just based on the track record of this team with offensive line, have some degree of confidence that they'll figure it out, but it might take some games to gel, as it has multiple years in the past now. And then to your point with running back, Chef, there's definitely some questions there. And can Dylan Edwards bear the burden of being an every down back? I don't know if he is that for us. How much are we going to see that split up between him and Joe Jackson? How much are we going to see some of the depth pieces, which we'll get to here when we think about like an Antonio Martin or Montario Elston or Devon Rice or JB Price. So multiple guys that are in that room. It's going to be very interesting to see how some of those guys get rotated in or schemed into specific plays against specific personnel. But I want to start out with another question around, again, zooming out. What changes are you anticipating seeing from Connor Riley to Matt Wells being the primary play caller? If any, there may not be any.
I don't know where Matt's going with this. In my head, for me, it's been as much as I'm thinking in my head that Matt Wells is going to come in here and revolutionize things. Chris Kleiman has been steadfast ever since he was at North Dakota State on what his offensive philosophy is going to be. So can we really expect wholesale changes, especially in the middle of, an Avery Johnson third year in a row that he's had a different offensive coordinator? Are we going to wholesale change it on him and expect him to do different things than what the system, asks? So my worry is that we change things and we're not the K-State identity that we are, and we get away from, years of recruiting the tight end position, like Matt laid out, that it's probably one of the deeper tight end rooms in maybe all of the country, that you get away from that. And now you're reaching and hoping that your transfer wide receivers, like you just laid out, Bob, that they come in and hit, because now we're trying to be a true spread offense. So I'm looking for that. And what I think will happen is that the offensive line being coached by Brian LePack will be more spread out. We'll see more of that Rutgers style of offense where you're still having two tight ends out there. You're still getting Dylan in the backfield. We're still running inside split zone, and we're going right up there. But we run more jet options and jet rushes across the formation. That motion that we're begging for, because we have the weapons for that, but we just weren't seeing it. So what I'm expecting is that we get more of that, but we still stick with the identity of our offense, where we're still smash mouth. We still can get it done. And we have a quarterback that, let's be honest, he can still, he's still due for 8 rushes a game. And those can be explosive.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everything you said. I think the biggest hope that I want to see is taking advantage of the speed, taking advantage of these guys who have lateral speed. Yeah, you mentioned the jet sweeps and jet options like that. Maybe leveraging a little bit more in the quarterback, running back option game. Quicker or quick screen passes off to Dylan, or we're hearing Devon Rice's name out there here pretty recently, of guys who, do have this burst and quickness of speed where you could do some bubble screens and stuff like that. That also, is almost the opposite of leveraging the tight ends and like doing all this type of stuff. But I think you can have and kind of meld an offense together that leverages both of those things. The bowl game was a really good example of it. We saw a lot more in the run game. I felt like we saw more quick passes. We saw more in the Jets, the jet run game. So for me, I just hope that we take advantage of the speed that we have, because this is probably the quickest team. You have the quickest skill position guys we've had in a very long time. And you want to let that be an asset as you're running offense. And then knowing you can switch it up and take advantage of 2 tight end scenarios, maybe doing a little bit more, with the option pass game with your tight ends like we saw 10 years ago. Who knows? I just want to see guys like Dylan Edwards in space. And I want to see, using some of these wide receivers in space and getting them the opportunity to try and get some yards after the catch. So that's what I'm looking for from an offense perspective.
And also to lay on that, the build of this team is kind of going away from everything that we've known at K-State. It's so funny. We have had smaller backs. Don't get me wrong. I've already said this, but we've had smaller backs that get it done inside, that you give the ball off 22 times a game, 20 times a game, and they catch 6 passes. Dylan is probably going to be that guy where he's still a smaller back, but he's more of that scat back, and we're going to get out in more space that we're all hoping for, like Matt was saying. But also, we've usually had small receivers on the outside. Nobody with the size to leverage jump balls, to, frame off a receiver. That's why I think we're going to be one of the more deadly red zone offenses and definitely in the league. All our tight ends are absolutely massive, where they can, catch the touchdowns just like they did this past season. But we've got 6'5", 6'4", 6'2" receivers that are all legitimate threats in the red zone and in space. It's a new way of looking at K-State's offense. We have not had that real big. I mean, the biggest receiver that I can think that we've had in the recent time is like Malik Knowles. And he was like 6'1", 6'2", and he was a speedster. He was trying to get past you, not jump up and get it.
Yeah, because Phillip Brooks was what, like 5'10",
5'6",
like that.
5'6". He's tiny.
I mean, you look at the depth too, and it falls off pretty dramatically as far as dudes with size. I mean, you've got Sterling Lockett on that list at 5'10", 169. He's still shy of 170 when you look at that, but I like both of those points. I do just real quick call out. So we did do kind of a quick call out for mailbag questions, Q&A type of questions. We got a handful. I'm going to sprinkle some of them throughout, but shout out to Zach Zumwalt. He had the most of them. And so I'll sprinkle them in with each position group as we go along. But his primary question was, can this year's team match or exceed 2022's offensive stats? He went kind of position group by position group. So I'll call those out, sprinkle those in throughout, but just calling that out and shout out to Zach Zumwalt for doing that. Start with quarterback. So there's been a lot of talk about Avery, quote unquote, taking the next step this year and him needing to do that in order for K-State to not just compete for a Big 12 championship, but potentially win one, make a college football playoff, and all of the other things beyond that could come along with that. And there's probably a good number of people who are listening to this show or familiar with this show that maybe don't know what that means. So in your the two of you, in your own words, explain to the audience what Avery taking the next step means for you. Does it mean fewer incompletions? Does it mean fewer interceptions? What does that mean for you when you think about him taking that next step?
I think an easy way to look at it is the statistically and looking at some of those pieces, but almost for me, I'm looking at just how he conducts the offense in year two. Overthrows on long passes are one thing, but it's how are you in more difficult game situations and how are you helping lead your team in those situations? I think of some of the losses last year, and I think the Houston game is a really good example of it. A guy, you're up 9 points and you can play call and blame the offensive coordinator all you want for, doing a pass play on third down in a rainstorm, whatever. But it's bad on the quarterback to even put yourself in a position to throw a pass like he did for an interception. It's some of the decision making that isn't going to show up in statistics that I'm going to be looking at as how Avery has improved through the season. And so throw less interceptions, increase your completion percentage, all that type of stuff. For me, it's kind of the feel of game by game and kind of seeing how, he's running the offense and how he's leading the offense. Not necessarily, running the foot or passing, but, is he a half second quicker in noticing a blitz and being able to get out of a situation where last year he would have taken a sack? That type of stuff that I'm going to be looking at to see from an improvement, and I will say this, if he does a lot of those things, then his statistical numbers are going to improve, but I'm going to look at it outside of the numbers.
I'm right there with you, man. I mean, I think I've been saying this since we've been discussing Avery in his junior year season. It's not a statistical thing for me. I think as a Kansas State fan, we can all get behind that the stats are never going to be, being able to compare. Like, take the Buckeyes, for example. Like, they have a litany of quarterbacks that have gone through this program, and they've all brought different things to the table, and they can say, oh, CJ Stroud was good because he broke this record at most touchdowns, and Will Howard did this, and he had this many completion percentage and all that stuff. At Kansas State, the passing numbers are so below average that statistically, if he broke those, he could still have a poor season and have still good statistical numbers in Kansas State history. So I don't think that's necessarily the way we should gauge our quarterbacks. Avery, for me, he's going to put up the statistical numbers. It's about the mentality. I think him being, he's a great speaker. He seems like a shy kid almost, a very composed kid, but he needs to be able to pull out that dog in him to say what the kids are saying. He needs to be able to do that and take the next step and say that I'm one of the best players on the field at any given moment, and I can carry us to this victory, because that's what the best players do. They carry teams when things are tight, like Matt was saying, and you don't necessarily – we're not going to be able to know whether he reads a blitz half a second early or whatever, but we can see that if he picks up a third down when it's 3rd and 6 and he reaches out to get that 7th yard, we'll be able to see that. And I think we didn't see a ton of that last year, and I think a lot of it's going to be on his shoulders this season to get those scrappy yards, to get third downs in any way possible, especially in close games. So I'm really, really hoping that he just breaks out of this shell of being, basically a system quarterback and, become a legend. That's what I'm looking for. And I think that's how I'm going to be grading Avery, because I think the stats are going to be there no matter what.
I am almost looking for him to kind of settle in and come into his own from a swagger standpoint, almost. Like he's got everything it takes from a talent perspective to be a guy that leads us to a Big 12 championship. And I'm not saying he has to be going around like flashing his watch like Shedeur Sanders, but Will Howard doing a shotgunning a beer celebrate, like that kind of stuff, like loosen up a little bit, show a little swagger, show a little energy and leadership, because you mentioned, Chef, that he almost comes across as a little bit shy. I want him to just break out of that a little bit and feel like almost look more comfortable just in between the plays even. And he's got a lot of poise, but I want to see that, and I want to see him really become more of a vocal leader on the team. It's not that he's not doing that behind the scenes, but you don't necessarily see a lot of that enthusiasm out of him. Again, that's not to knock him. That may just be his personality. That may just be his style. Real gangsters move in silence, that kind of thing for him. But I would love to see a little bit more gusto, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be much. The first question from Zach Zumwalt, again, shout out to you for peppering us with some good questions. Will Avery this year meet or exceed on passing yards what Adrian and Will combined for in 2022, which was 2,894 passing yards?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I don't think that we
2,700 last year. So
right. I mean, it's not too much of a bar to clear. I think, and you just put 2 and 2 together. I mean, will the running backs have the production that DJ Giddens had? If the answer is no, the yards have to come from somewhere. And I think Avery throwing the ball is probably the next best answer to get our offense going. So I think he'll be throwing the ball more if our running game is not nearly what it was last year. So I think that's pretty easy. I think he's clearing that number. And even if our running game is going, I think he's clearing that either way. I think this is the best group of receivers that he's had. The best, obviously, the tight ends have gone up. I don't see any reason why, other than the O-line collapsing, that we're just not good, and then all bets are off if that's happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all have high expectations for this season. Um, I don't necessarily think this team is going to be in a lot of 17-14 barn burners. I think it's going to be a conference where the offense is really going to play a huge part in a lot of the team's success. So I would go above that number, 2,800 yards, just because I do think we're not going to see as much production from the running game as we did last season and in the season before, and it's going to require passing the ball a little bit more and kind of airing it out a little bit more.
All right. The next question, the real question mark at quarterback right now is not who's starting. It's not any of that. It's who's behind Avery, who's QB2. Is there going to be an or next to, Blake Barnett and Jacob Knuth's names, respectively? Dylan Duff has been talked highly of in the preseason so far. So I've got two questions. The first one, in mop-up duty, who do you want to see most?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, Blake already did his redshirt year. Not that that's super important. I think both of them are guys that are K-State through and through. I think who I'd want to see in mop-up duty, I guess, you don't really see much because, I mean, we all knew what Avery was going to be, but did the mop-up duty versus Southeast Missouri really say anything? I mean, I guess it could. I guess I would just go with Jacob because I think that is more the guy, if the bullets are flying, very similar to what Roberson Taquan Roberson did last year versus Colorado. You need a guy that can get in there and do it when the bullets are flying, not just, beating up on, Army's backups if we ever get to that point, which I don't know if we will. But, yeah, give me Knuth. I think Knuth, and I think he's deserved it. He's a guy through and through.
I'm gonna probably go Blake Barnett actually, to see from a younger talent perspective. I mean, here's how I look at this. You have to look. Okay, there's two ways you could look at it. One, who's the most prepared in case a situation comes and Avery gets hurt and you need somebody to run the offense.
See, that's my next question. So
the second path you take is, hey, Blake Barnett is in a situation where he's going to battle for the starting quarterback position next season. And do you want to put him in a situation where he's third on the depth chart and there's a chance that he could transfer out? Two ways to look at it. I think if Blake Barnett and Jacob Knuth are at the same level, basically, I almost think going with the younger talent who could potentially be the starter next season is the move. That being said, we really haven't seen much of him. We haven't really seen much of Jacob Knuth. And so I think it's hard to kind of tell, at this point until you get to the North Dakota game. And hopefully, we're seeing both of them out there because we're up 45-0, and they're getting snaps. But I think it's hard to tell. I prefer kind of the youth kind of angle, especially if the second level on the chart is Jacob Knuth or Blake Barnett, and decision has not been made. But I think, again, it's very hard for us to be able to tell what's going on with backup quarterback position until we see some actual game action.
Yeah, for me, if it's mop-up duty, truly mop-up duty, you're up 3 or 4 scores on North Dakota or Army if we get to that point, or UCF or some of these teams that you think maybe aren't going to be as good. I would rather see Blake Barnett than Jacob Knuth, but I would, give Blake Barnett a quarter and then throw Dylan Duff in there for a series. I would love to see what Dylan Duff has to offer this team as well, since he's also someone that has been talked about a lot and he was a highly touted recruit. But Blake Barnett's a guy I'm really excited for in this program and in this quarterback room. And the next point here is in an injury situation involving Avery, God forbid that does happen. Who are you riding with? So who is your Taquan Roberson against Colorado finishing out that drive?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Jacob Knuth. I mean, this is literally Blake Barnett's first off season. I think he was injured all of last season to the point where he couldn't even participate in those fall camps and those spring camps, dealing with a broken leg, I think. So I think even if they haven't had game time, I think getting multiple off seasons and familiarity with the system is important. So I would go Jacob Knuth. But going back to the garbage time question, Blake Barnett, what kind of game does he have? As far as we know, he's fast. He can run. Do you want that in your backup quarterback in blowout situations? Do you want him out there scrambling if he's your number two? I don't know. I think it's kind of more of a guy that can hand the ball off and complete short passes to get it going.
This is just a really hard question because I don't know really a lot about these guys. I guess, do you want a guy with more experience out there in a situation? Maybe, or do we want the most talented guy? Quite frankly, we don't know. We just don't know I prefer working with talent over experience. Because it's a risk reward situation. It's a riskier play that could, give you more reward. I don't know. I don't have a good answer on this one.
I would go Knuth because when you think about even that BYU game, when things were a little bit out of reach, but you just needed a change of pace, that was the experienced guy they went to in that situation, as opposed to Taquan, who maybe they wanted to save him for a different situation. But I don't know. I think Knuth, he's been there. He's been in the program for a few years now. He knows the system. If Avery's not the guy, he's at least got a good handle on the system after having been in it for a few years now to this point. I just feel more confident with a guy like Knuth than I do with Blake being the leader of this team if Avery's out for a few games at this point.
All that being said, Jacob Knuth, and we say how familiar he is with the system and all that stuff, he's in a quarterback competition with a guy that's literally never had an offseason. So I don't know what that says
Fair
about
point.
him, or if it says really good things about Blake. I don't know. So that's the double-edged sword we're dealing with.
That is a fair point. Last year we went through and we did, is Avery going to break XYZ record? And we went through every single one of those records. I'm not going to go through every single one of those records this time, but if Avery is going to break one of the all-time records, single season, whatever, gun to your head, which record is he going to break, if any?
I think it's his own touchdown record, right? Own single season.
It is 25.
I think that's the easiest one. What is total touchdowns? Colin had 20 something? Is it 40?
40 total touchdowns.
That's the 40 even. I could possibly see that.
All three of us had him breaking that last year, by the way.
How close was he?
He had 32.
I mean, and he missed 3 games of not being able to run.
Correct.
So for me, I think that's on the board as well. That's my dark horse, but I think the easiest one, the layup, is that he breaks his own passing.
I think he will get the single game touchdown record. I think we'll finally see a fiver this year. And it's just because I believe in a lot of the skill position players, and knowing that I think we're going to be airing the ball out a little bit more this season. I think 5 touchdowns, in one of these games, there's potential for that, with the hope that the wide receiver room is as good as advertised and your tight ends haven't regressed in the offseason. So
which game does it happen in? Call your shot.
Well, it's not week. I would love week 0, but that's not going to happen.
Brother, it's got to be UCF. It's UCF.
I was going to say, UCF, Colorado at the end of the year. Sure as hell not going to be Army. We're probably going to have 5 possessions overall against Army. So I'm gonna go Colorado. Last game of the regular season at home, and he's got to show off. Got to show off for the Heisman voters. So just throw 100. He's gonna have 100 pass plays. No, I'll pick Colorado. That would be my prediction.
Okay. So before we move on to running backs, just a quick plug. If you go to CocaineWillie.com, we've got our Cocaine Willie Gear Garage. You can buy some Wildcat Country, Let's Ride merch, sweatshirts, baby, toddler tees, tote bags, bucket hats, you name it, mugs. We've got it there at the Gear Garage. So check it out. And if you don't want any of that, no one's forcing you to buy it. We just wanted to do a quick plug, CocaineWillie.com. Check it out there. All right, that's going to do it for us today, covering off on the offense in general and the quarterback position group. Once again, we want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Anti-Maze Parlor. Visit them at www.antimaze.com for a full list of their upcoming events. And if you're stopping by this week, whenever it might be, if you're not going to be going to Dublin, if you're going to be hanging out in Manhattan for the game, stop by and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Maybe pick up a koozie if they have those there by then. And we have our merch store up as well at CocaineWillie.com. You can buy our Wildcat Country Let's Ride t-shirts, sweatshirts, bucket hats, tote bags, you name it. We've got it up there at the Cocaine Willie Gear Garage is what we're calling it there. And then finally, we are the K-State representative on the College Huddle, which is the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. You can check them out at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. Last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, or Instagram, or you can follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Chef isn't here, but we are all Coke and no joke. Wildcat Country. Let's ride.